Leon Kennedy, the man that literally saved Resident Evil from obscurity back in the early 2000s, when it seemed like everyone was tired of the usual survival horror genre. After 3 back-to-back Resident Evil titles that focus on the same claustrophobic and tank control driven experience through titles 1 to 3, everyone started to grow tired of the formula, and there was a desperate need for a change. Especially with the new console generation leap, with the GameCube coming just around the corner. Capcom needed something new and bold to bring audiences back into Resident Evil. They needed a whole gameplay shift. Resident Evil went from the usual fixed camera to an over-the-shoulder, action-orientated approach, where you went from hiding from zombies in a tight corridor to now throwing you in some rural Spanish village, where you are now hunting them down as an older and more experienced Leon Kennedy. Instead of just being the same scared rookie cop we see in the first game we play as him, Leon is now a lot more capable, effortlessly roundhouse kicking and suplexing anything that stands in his way. And with this newfound capabilities, his responsibilities grew as well, as he's now a seasoned FBI agent who is now tasked with finding and rescuing the president's missing daughter. Resident Evil 4 focuses a lot more on the action and moment-to-moment gameplay, as you strategically plan out how to take out what enemy depending on what guns you have and how much ammo you have left over. So this game still carries the same resource management as the originals, but now with its own next generation twist on it. And as mentioned before, this game adds a new melee combat mechanic, where after you stagger an enemy, you can run up to them to trigger a unique melee attack, depending on which body part you shot. And if you want to find out more about that, you can watch this video that I made discussing Resident Evil 4's unique combat. But let's get back to the point. Although Resident Evil 4 seemed like the perfect palate cleanser for fans who grew tired of the previous, slower paced and horror driven Resident Evil games, the big question for Capcom was, where do they go from here? Resident Evil 4 was the best selling Resident Evil game up to this point. Clearly the fans love this new style of action horror gameplay. So if Leon and his style was so successful, then why wasn't he in Resident Evil 5? The answer to that is a lot more damaging and nuanced than most people realize. Capcom couldn't just throw Leon back into the scene for story reasons. So to combat that, they pretty much just took everything they thought made Leon cool and slapped it onto Chris. The action, the confidence, everything. And as a result of this, the Chris we see in Resident Evil 5 looks and acts nothing like the Chris from the original games. They made Chris, the literal main character of the franchise by the way, into a Leon Kennedy knockoff. And this shows us that Capcom didn't really understand the success of Resident Evil 4 at all. They didn't understand the unique tension and gameplay balance that that game uniquely created. They only understood the aesthetic. So I guess more action is the answer, Capcom thought. Resident Evil 5 introduces more enemies, more guns, more quick time events, more set pieces, and sure, on paper this seems like exactly what the fans wanted, and yeah, the sales really do show it. Resident Evil 5 beat Resident Evil 4 sales out of the water, and this may sound like a good thing, but Resident Evil 5 didn't really have as big as an impact on the larger gaming landscape that Resident Evil 4 did. Resident Evil 4 literally invented the third person over the shoulder perspective, and Resident Evil 5 played it safe. It thought that if it isn't broken, then don't fix it. So it has the same over the shoulder perspective. Resident Evil 4 made the player face somewhat small hordes of enemies, but it never felt small because the player never felt really overpowered. Unless you played New Game Plus, because you're always struggling with ammo and resources. You just never have enough bullets to just kill and shoot everyone. So you have to strategically think, let me shoot that guy in the head so I can kick him, then I can save ammo for the next area. Whereas in Resident Evil 5, you're literally wiping out entire villages of enemies with no remorse. The literal intro of this game has more enemies than you'll ever fight in any section of Resident Evil 4. On paper, it's like, wow, there's so many enemies in this next generation Resident Evil game. That's so cool. I can't wait to finish it. And then after 5 hours of gameplay, it's like, wow, there's so many enemies in this new Resident Evil game. That's pretty cool, I guess. And naturally you begin to question, why are you even playing this game if it's this boring? Shooting the same guy in the head and then punching him gets old after the first hour or two. And this is why Resident Evil 5 is probably my least played Resident Evil game. So sure, the game sold extremely well on paper, but it doesn't really have much of an impact, and there's a reason it isn't spoken about much today. And then we have Resident Evil 6. We don't talk about that one for a good reason. That one went too off the action rails that we don't even have enough time in this video to even think about it. Resident Evil 6 had 4 different campaigns, each with their own legacy Resident Evil character and their own genre of playstyle, and they just messed each one of them up. They tried doing horror with Leon, action with Chris, but each section just fell flat on its face, and as a result, Capcom didn't really know what the fans wanted, so they just tried to do everything at once, and it just made Resident Evil 6 a nothing burger if you think about it. But just know this, the game was so badly received that it sent the entire Resident Evil IP into a multiple year-long slumber, which had everyone wondering if the series was well and truly dead. But then, what saved the franchise this time? Was it a shiny new genre-defining game with fan favorite Leon Kennedy front and center showing off the new next generation console's power while cracking one-liners doing backflips off zombie chainsaws? Resident Evil 7 took the series back to its roots, with a new scared protagonist stuck in an eerie and claustrophobic environment, as weaving and interconnected paths just like the original games, way back in the PlayStation 1 era. Resident Evil 7 reminded people that the series was more than just a cheesy zombie shooter, and it could actually genuinely scare people, and not just with cheap one-off jump scares, but instead with impeccable sound design and environmental detail, as well as tense resource management and item scarcity. And with Resident Evil 7's resounding success, it pushed Capcom to finally finish the Resident Evil 2 remake, which was in development hell. And once again, Resident Evil 2 remake capitalized on the best aspects of the originals. The massive RPD building with winding paths and a multi-layered story where you delve deeper into Umbrella's evil doings as either rookie cop Leon Kennedy or newcomer, well, they're both newcomers, Claire Redfield, which is Chris Redfield's sister. And the success of Resident Evil 2 remake speaks for itself, as it revitalized Capcom as a staple for survival horror, and it put Resident Evil back on the map again, and the rest is history. Resident Evil 2 remake didn't just bring back the horror, but it also fitted it to work in a modern gaming landscape. Instead of the dated tank controls, fixed camera angles of the original, they adapted the RPD to work from a third-person over-the-shoulder perspective. And unlike Resident Evil 7, they couldn't just stick a first-person camera perspective on this game, because people wanted to see their favorite characters back for the first time in years. So they created a whole new third camera perspective, which still felt scary. Remember, this is still a survival horror game at the end of the day. And yeah, the game sold incredibly well. The irony is that when Leon came back in Resident Evil 2 remake, he went back to being a vulnerable, scared rookie cop with no backflips or one-liners. And yet, he was better than ever. Why? Because Capcom finally understood what made him work in the first place. It was never the action, but rather, it was the tension behind it that really allowed Leon to shine through.